Alrighty, welcome everyone to our TELedvisors webinar for May 2018. My name is Kahiwa Sabaya, and the idea for our session today was to give an opportunity for all of our members to share a small project or a project that's in progress or something that they'd worked on that might never ever make it to be a proper research article or something like that, but a way for us to be able to start to share some of the work that we do, because I'm pretty confident we all do really, really cool stuff that I'd love to hear more about. So we've had a number of fantastic volunteers step up for our first showcase, or show and tell. I would like to welcome and hand on over to our co-leader of the TELedvisor group, Colin.
Thank you, Kahiwa. I thought I would just kind of bang on about where I'm up to with my PhD, because it's very advisor oriented. In some ways it's a little bit weird because I've been working on this for 2 years. I'm still just in the process of putting the proposal together, so the whole thing where I get approved to be actually going out and doing the research. So this is all very important to me. I also tweet at Gamer Learner if you haven't seen me on Twitter before. So where I've kind of started, whoops, just spoiled my entire joke. So I've been looking at these questions. So what strategies are being used in higher education to promote understanding of the roles and value of advisors among academic staff? How do advisors see our role? How is this seen by academics and higher education management, and what strategies are particularly effective and why? Now, I've been looking at these questions for, as I say, about 2 years, and I'm starting to see them like this in some ways. I'm feeling that way. So recently I've been looking at what I'm really trying to get at. And I guess, so who even are advisors? What are the problems that we're facing in our work day to day? And what are some solutions? And obviously, most of what I've been doing so far is just kind of a deep dive into the literature. So that's largely what I'm going to be talking about. So who are we? For the most part, academic developers, learning designers, and learning technologists, professional and academic staff. That said, there are probably 30 or 40 different other names that we go by. And this is some of the things that we do. And as you can see, that's a pretty varied and diverse list. And I'm pretty sure that that's only beginning to scratch the surface. One of the things that I've really found is that while there has been some interesting work done, maybe 10 years ago or more, about how many advisors there are working in Australasian higher education, there's really nothing around at the moment that says, yeah, there's like 500 of us and we're in these kind of roles and we're working in these kind of units, what kind of qualifications we have, what our pathway to the profession is. And I think that's really important, because there's no, you can't, well, it's very, there's no real degree that you can go out and do to become a learning designer or a learning technologist or an academic developer. Everyone has come from somewhere else, which is fantastic, because I think that means that we actually bring a really rich diversity of experience and knowledge to this kind of work. So obviously the problems that we're facing, our roles and titles are just incredibly unclear. And if you were at Ascolite last year, you would have seen the paper that I presented with Kate Mitchell and Chia Adachi, who's in the webinar at the moment. Our work really doesn't sit in the academic or the professional area. We're kind of just covering everything. So no one really knows how to describe what we do. And a big thing is, I think there's this triangle basically where there's us, and then there's institutional management, and then there's the academics. And there's all of these complex relationships between all three parts. But often when academics are fighting with management, we're seen as, being the people who have to operationalize the stuff that management wants to get done, and we often get blamed for, subpar policies or whatever. When actually what we're trying to do is, moderate or influence some of those policies, but because we're, not necessarily academics, and it's academics who are in management, we're not necessarily being heard. Obviously, so people don't quite know what it is that we can do, what's important to us, how our units work, where they even go for help, and what we do on a day-to-day basis. And part of this is because many of us, and look, I mean, it's important to acknowledge that a lot of advisors are in academic roles, but for those of us who aren't, we don't get the opportunity to do research as part of our day-to-day work, which means that we don't contribute to the body of research, and so our voices aren't necessarily being heard as much in the literature. So you're getting a much more of a teacher, researcher, conventional academic perspective in what's being written about us, and I think that's a little bit of a gap. And all of this is not to say that, sometimes the way that we do our work is not necessarily the best way, and a few times it's one of the recurring themes that's come up in the literature has been that academics really wish we understood their needs, their issues, their challenges, their practices a little bit more. Now, I suspect we probably do pretty well, but that's being reflected. People are saying it, so it's something that we need to pay attention to. And look, certainly sometimes advisors can get a little bit too caught up on the technology at the expense of the bigger picture. So some of the solutions, some of the things that are being discussed at the moment, and I think I've seen these discussions coming up in the TELedvisors community, which is great. Professionalisation, accreditation, do we want to standardise? So we can say if you're advertising for a learning designer, they will be able to do X, Y, and Z. Now, the other side of that is it's kind of nice to be able to do X, Y, and Z, but then also dip into A, B, and C from time to time because what we do isn't very well defined. So the lack of a definition is in some ways something that makes the work a little bit more interesting. It'd certainly be nice if we had a little bit more influence on institutional strategic direction. So I'd like to find ways to do that. And now Bowden Brew have done some work, which I'm still trying to get my head around, but it seems like it could be valuable, about reconceptualising academic work as professional practice. So yeah, when I understand it, I can talk a little bit more about it, but it's definitely a thing. Here's a bunch of references. I'll chuck these slides up in the discussion forum if you're interested in looking at any of those things. And that's me done. And sorry, I think I went over time.
Thanks very much, Colin. You have kind of gone over time. We've got time maybe for one quick question. It looks like a lot of the chat comments were really around definitely supporting the gap that this research that you're looking at will hopefully fill. A lot of the group here feeling like they aren't being represented or noticed or valued for the work that we do, and having that defined could be really useful. Any particular questions before we move on from the group?
They're just doing, sorry.
Yep, go.
I think Francis is getting ready for his go next.
Oh, that's fine. Okay, look, I'm happy to. I'm not even up to gathering data yet. I'm still finalising my methodology, which is why I'm focusing on the literature. But I'm happy to. Maybe we can chat a little bit later on, and I
Yep.
will hand it over to you. Thank you.
Fantastic, thank you, Colin. And as Chair suggested, let's continue this conversation on the Moodle side. I think this is something that is obviously resonating with a lot of the groups, so there's probably a lot of interest and support for this work. So thank you very much, Colin.